My name is Calder Van, and I have worked as a licensed boat tour guide in the Florida Everglades for 9 years. People assume my job is mostly pointing at alligators, tossing out facts about mangroves, and snapping photos for tourists who don't know the difference between a crocodile and a log. And sure, that's part of it. But what they don't see, what they aren't supposed to see, are the rules we follow once we take a boat into the backcountry channels. The rules aren't written in any handbook. They're passed down verbally, from guide to guide, just before you're allowed to take a boat out alone for the first time. I was told them by my supervisor, a man named Orrin Hatch, who said them the way people say prayers they don't believe in anymore, but still fear breaking. He made me memorize them before he handed over the keys to the airboat. Rule 1. If you see fog forming in a straight line, turn around. Fog here never forms straight. If it does, it's not weather. Rule 2. If you hear splashing behind the boat after dusk, do not look back. Increase speed by 10 knots and keep your eyes forward. Rule 3. If you see the mangroves part like a doorway, do not enter. No matter what you think you saw, or who you think you saw. At the time, I thought they were jokes. Dark jokes, sure, but the Everglades has a way of making men superstitious. Too much horizon, too much water that looks like land, too many things that sound like they shouldn't exist. But I learned quickly that no one was laughing when they repeated the rules. They said them quietly and mechanically, like people reciting procedures for a chemical spill. Today, the day everything happened, started like any other. One tour in the morning, one in the late afternoon, then a private reservation at dusk. I normally avoid dusk tours. Orrin always told me, the Glades changes after 5 p.m. The water looks the same, but it's not. I used to think he was just being dramatic. Now I think he undersold it. The private group was a father and his adult daughter. Tourists from Minnesota, polite, soft-spoken, so pale they looked like they'd sunburned from a photograph of Florida. They wanted to see the untouched Everglades. People love using that phrase, even though nothing out here is really untouched. Everything is moving, breathing, fighting, feeding. Pretending otherwise is how people get into trouble. We launched from the smaller dock near Highland Hammock, the one the public doesn't know exists unless they wander too far from the visitor center. The late sunlight cut across the water in warm stripes, mosquitoes hovering like dust in a sunbeam. The engine sputtered, coughed, then growled to life under my hands. The father sat up front with a camera strapped to his wrist. The daughter sat behind him, her hair tied up in a tight knot, scanning everything with wide eyes. "Do you guys want a calm tour?" I asked. "Or something a little more adventurous?" "Adventurous," the daughter answered before her father even opened his mouth. He laughed politely, but I saw something in his expression, a slight tightening around the eyes, that told me he preferred calm. We eased out into the main waterway, the boat slicing through the surface like a blade. I narrated as usual, the history of the Glades, the difference between sawgrass prairie and mangrove forests, the freshwater-saltwater mixing zones, the alligator population density. They listened politely, occasionally pointing at a white ibis or a turtle sunning itself on driftwood. Everything was normal for the first 20 minutes. Then the marsh grew quieter than it should have. It wasn't dramatic. No sudden cutoff of sound. More like someone slowly turning the volume dial down on the entire world. The insects dulled first. Then the soft slaps of water against the hull. Then the birdsong. Until all that was left was the low hum of the engine and the wind brushing past my ears. The Everglades is never silent. Ever. The only place more consistently loud is a rainforest. The silence was wrong enough that I felt it in my teeth. The daughter leaned closer. "Is it always this quiet out here?" "No," I said before I could soften the answer. "It's not. The father lifted his camera again, but I watched the way he gripped it. Not like a man taking photos, like a man holding something in front of him for protection. We continued forward anyway, because the channel was too narrow to turn without scraping the hull. The mangroves crowded us on both sides, their roots rising like skeletal fingers out of the water. The sky dimmed faster than the sun should have allowed. I checked the time. 5:42 p.m. sunset wasn't until 6:12. That was when I noticed the fog. A thin line of it stretched across the water ahead, perfectly straight, as if drawn by a ruler. Not a patch, not a swirl. A line, white and perfectly even, sitting about a foot above the water like a strip of glowing cloth. My stomach went cold. Rule 1, turn around. But I couldn't, not in this narrow channel. I slowed the engine, letting the boat drift. The father and daughter leaned forward, whispering to each other. "What is that?" the father asked. "A fog bank," I said, but my voice betrayed me. It cracked on the last word. Fog banks don't form like that. Fog doesn't hold shape like that. Fog doesn't wait. We drifted closer. I pulled the throttle back even more. The engine quieted to a low purr. The air cooled noticeably, enough that goosebumps rose on my arms. The daughter reached for her phone to take a picture. "Don't," I said sharply. She froze mid-movement. "Why not?" she asked. "Because if the rules are real, then this is the last thing we should be near. Because we should not look at it. Because..." The engine sputtered once, coughed, and died. The silence swallowed us whole, and the line of fog began to move. Not drifting, sliding, right toward the boat. The line of fog slid toward us as if pulled by an underwater cable, perfectly straight, perfectly deliberate. I'd have sworn it was alive if that didn't sound ridiculous even inside my own head. The father grabbed the side rail, leaning forward like he was trying to understand what he was seeing. The daughter took a small step closer to him. My hand was already turning the ignition key, praying the engine would cough back to life. It didn't. The silence felt padded, like we were wrapped in insulation. Even the water seemed muffled. "Is something wrong with the boat?" the daughter asked. "It stalled," I said, keeping my voice level. "Engines do that sometimes." That wasn't a lie, not technically. But I'd never had an engine die in perfectly calm water, with a tank full of gas, and no mechanical warning signs. Airboats don't just quit unless something fouls the intake, debris, plant matter, maybe a clump of sawgrass. But we weren't anywhere near sawgrass. The surface behind us was clean, empty. The fog reached the bow of the boat and split apart around the metal, sliding along both sides like water parting around a rock. It didn't behave like fog. Fog curls, drifts, dissipates. This slid. Smooth. Controlled. I kept one hand on the ignition and tried again. The engine clicked, once, loud as a gunshot in the silence, and then nothing. The father finally spoke. "Should we be concerned?" I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want to say the truth. I didn't know. And that terrified me more than anything else. "We'll be fine once the engine turns over," I answered. The fog reached the stern and continued sliding past us, keeping its shape the whole time. The strip stretched at least 20 yards long, disappearing around a bend in the channel. As it passed, the air grew even colder. My breath fogged in front of me, something that simply shouldn't happen in the Florida Everglades in early autumn. Then, as soon as the last tip of the line drifted past, the regular fog behind it dissolved instantly, like someone switched off a machine. The insects started up again. Birds chattered somewhere far off. The normal world snapped back into place. The father exhaled shakily. What was that?" I pretended to tap the fuel gauge, acting like I was troubleshooting. "We need to restart the engine first. Then we'll head back." I didn't want to go forward anymore. Forward led deeper into the backcountry. Forward led where the fog went. Rule 1 wasn't a suggestion. I turned the key again. The engine sputtered weakly, then died. This wasn't a mechanical failure. Something was dampening the sound, or the engine itself, or the air around us. It reminded me of trying to start a car in deep water. The resistance, the heaviness, the sense something invisible was pushing back. I climbed down to check the intake grate near the back, keeping my eyes on the water. The father and daughter watched silently. Kneeling, I brushed my hand along the grate. No plants, no mud, no blockage, just cold metal. Too cold. I jerked my hand back instinctively. It felt like touching a freezer coil. The metal had never been that cold, not even on winter mornings. "Is it bad?" the father asked. I didn't answer immediately. I stood, wiped my hand on my shorts. "We'll start drifting once the wind picks up," I said. "Worst case, we paddle back toward a wider area where we can restart safely." That seemed to calm them, at least a little. The Everglades looks wild, but most channels eventually link back to human-accessible areas. Getting stranded isn't comfortable, but it's seldom dangerous unless night falls. And we were running out of light fast. At that moment, the daughter said quietly, "I think someone's on the bank." I froze. The father followed her gaze to the right side of the waterway, where the mangrove roots rose in tight, gnarled webs. I didn't look at first. I didn't want to look. Human figures in the glades after hours are rarely a good sign, and that's assuming they're human to begin with. But finally I forced myself to glance over. Something moved. Not stepping out, not waving, not approaching. Just shifting. Weight redistribution. Like someone adjusting their stance, while trying not to be seen. "Where exactly?" I asked. The daughter pointed. "Behind those roots." I saw a shoulder, I think, or a head maybe. I watched the spot long enough that my eyes blurred. The problem with the Everglades is that it's full of shapes pretending to be other shapes. Branches become limbs. Shadows become silhouettes. Water reflections mimic movement. But then something else happened. A splash. Not loud. Not close. Somewhere behind us. The father turned sharply. "What was that?" My skin crawled. Rule 2. If you hear splashing behind the boat after dusk, do not look back. The sun was nearly down. Dusk had arrived. I forced my eyes to stay forward. "It's probably a gator," I said. "They're more active at this hour." The father peered past me, turning his torso like he was trying to see behind the boat. "Sir," I said firmly, "please keep facing forward." He looked at me, surprised by the intensity in my voice. "Why?" he asked. Because if what Oren told me was true, and if Rule 2 wasn't just superstition, then looking back was the worst possible thing we could do. "We need to stay balanced in the channel," I said instead. "Turning suddenly can rock the boat." Another splash. Closer this time. The daughter grabbed her father's sleeve. "Dad, don't look." Smart girl. The air behind us felt heavier, as if something large displaced the water, but not quite at the surface. The kind of disturbance you feel before you hear. The father swallowed. "Is something following us?" The truth clawed at my throat. "Yes," I wanted to say, but I didn't. Instead, I knelt near the engine again, pretending to work while listening. Heartbeat thudding in my ears. A third splash. Closer. Right behind the stern. Then the waterline dipped. Something heavy moving upward. Not surfacing. Rising. The father began to turn. I lunged and grabbed his arm. "Don't look," I whispered, because whatever was climbing toward the back of the boat was nearly here. The father stiffened under my grip, instinct fighting instinct, fear telling him to freeze, curiosity telling him to turn. I tightened my hand on his arm just enough to make the message clear. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he understood me. My face must have given something away, because he stopped trying to turn around. "What is it?" he whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Any answer I gave would either be a lie or the kind of truth that would break both of their nerves wide open. The daughter's breathing grew rapid and shallow behind him. The waterline at the stern dipped again, just slightly. The kind of movement that meant whatever was rising was big. Not man-sized, not gator-sized, bigger. But the water didn't churn the way it should. Alligators don't move quietly, not heavy ones, and nothing else in the glades grows large enough to displace that much water without a sound. And whatever it was hadn't broken the surface. It was climbing slowly toward the back of the boat. I stood up carefully, moving to the console again. My fingers fumbled with the ignition key, not because I thought the engine would actually turn, but because I needed something to do, something that wasn't staring into the darkening water or listening for the next splash. The key clicked. The engine didn't react. The father whispered again, voice trembling now. "Calder, what's behind us?" Another splash. Soft, controlled. Less like something bursting out of the water, and more like something placing a weight where water shouldn't support it. The hull settled a half-inch lower. We didn't have much time. "Both of you," I said quietly. "Stay seated. Face forward. Hold the rails." "Is it dangerous?" the daughter asked. "Yes," I said. The honesty slipped out before I could think to soften it. "Very." The stern dipped again. The daughter squeezed her father's arm so tightly her knuckles went white. I scanned the mangrove roots ahead. The channel curved slightly left, widening just enough that turning around might actually be possible if we got the engine back. But that meant reaching that bend alive. "Listen to me," I said, keeping my voice low and even. "When I say duck, you duck. When I say hold on, you hold on. You don't turn. You don't look back. Understand?" They both nodded. The water behind us shifted with a dragging, weighty sound, like something testing its grip on the hull. My skin prickled. I'd ferried tourists, biologists, rangers, photographers. I'd dealt with gator charges, storms, even one lightning strike that hit the water 20 yards from the bow. None of that scared me like this did. This didn't feel like an animal. It felt like intention. I reached for the emergency paddle, clipped along the side. The father grabbed my wrist. "You're not going to hit it, are you?" he whispered. "No," I said. "I'm going to distract it." Because if whatever was rising wanted onto the boat, we were done. I unhooked the paddle and moved slowly toward the starboard side, the opposite of where the father had almost turned earlier. The mangrove shadows shifted with the wind, but nothing moved in a human shape now. Whatever the daughter had seen earlier could have been a trick of light, but what was behind us wasn't light. I dipped the paddle into the water, pushing against the current to angle the boat slightly. If I could get us drifting, just drifting, toward the widening bend, we'd have a chance. Not a good one, but a chance. The stern dipped deeper. A scraping sound followed, faint but unmistakable. Something dragging against metal. My breath hitched in my throat. The daughter whimpered once, quickly muffling it behind her hand. "Steady," I murmured. No sudden moves. Then came another sound, a wet, heavy exhale. Not a hiss, not a snort. An exhale. Air passing through something that shouldn't have lungs. The father muttered a prayer. The paddle slipped slightly in my grasp. I adjusted my grip, pushing harder. The boat began to turn by inches. The bow angled toward the bend, the daylight nearly gone now. Just a smeared orange line along the western horizon. We were minutes from full darkness. The stern scraped again, louder this time, metal bending under force. The daughter let out a strangled gasp. "It's trying to, Dad. It's trying to climb up." "I know," I whispered. Don't look. I felt the boat lift on one side, just slightly, as if something was using weight to test its ability to board. I did the only thing I could think of. I slapped the paddle against the water as hard as I could. The sound cracked across the channel like a gunshot. The hull lurched. The stern rose abruptly as whatever clung there dropped away. Water churned, not violently, but deliberately, like something withdrawing to reassess. Hold on, I barked. The father and daughter gripped the rails again. I dragged the paddle through the water, forcing the bow to rotate faster. We drifted toward the bend. Only 10 more yards, then 8, then 5. A splash erupted behind us, large, violent, like something launching upward. The daughter screamed but didn't turn. I didn't dare look. The boat shook, rocking side to side. Whatever had risen had come down hard, but not onto the hull, onto the water. It was getting impatient. We reached the bend. The channel widened enough that I could try the ignition again. I dropped into the seat, turned the key, and whispered, "Please." The engine sputtered weakly, then coughed, then roared to life. The sound blasted through the silence, scattering birds from the trees. The father let out a shaky sob. The daughter covered her ears and cried into her sleeve. I shoved the throttle forward. The airboat surged ahead. Behind us, something slammed the water hard enough that the impact echoed through the mangroves. But it didn't follow. Not immediately. I didn't dare slow down. Not for anything. Not yet. We tore through the channel, the last thread of daylight fading behind us. My hand shook on the controls. The father finally spoke through his trembling. "Calder, are we safe?" "No," I said, because ahead, in the direction of the dock, a faint line of fog was beginning to form, perfectly straight, and this time, it was waiting. The straight band of fog across the channel ahead glowed faintly in the last scraps of daylight, as if the fading sun had gotten trapped inside it. I pulled the throttle back, just enough to keep the boat moving, but not so fast that we'd plow directly into it. My heart hammered against my ribs with the steady thud of someone knocking from inside a locked room. The father leaned forward. "Calder, is that the same fog as before?" "Yes," I said, "or another of it." The daughter was crying quietly now, but not hysterically. More like her brain was trying to protect her by shutting down everything except the basic ability to breathe. The fog wasn't drifting. It wasn't thinning or thickening or billowing. It was holding a deliberate, unbroken barrier stretched across the channel like a cordon. "Can we go around?" the father asked. "No, the mangroves are too dense. We'd break the hull." The engine hummed underneath us, still revived but sounding strained, as though it resisted moving forward at all. The airboat vibrated in a strange way, like the air around us was thicker, resisting the sound. The father wiped his face with both hands. "So what do we do?" I stared at the fog line. We couldn't go back, because back there, behind us, something had tested the hull, tried to climb aboard, and slammed the water in frustration when we escaped. It wasn't gone. It was just waiting. And the way echoes moved in the Everglades after dusk, sound carried in directions that made no sense. Heading backward was an option. I pushed the throttle slightly. The boat crept forward. The fog didn't move. A tight, cold sensation coiled in my stomach. The father noticed. "You're scared," he said, his voice barely audible. "Yes," I said softly. "Very." The daughter finally spoke. "Is that thing in there?" "I don't know." But I feared it was worse, that the fog itself wasn't a hiding place. It was a lure. Rule 1. If you see fog forming in a straight line, turn around. We couldn't turn around. We drifted closer. The temperature dropped again, biting against my skin. My breath fogged in the air. The father looked like he was fighting the urge to vomit. "What happens if we go through it?" he asked. I shook my head. "I've never heard of anyone doing it." "Because they didn't make it back," the daughter whispered. Her voice sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with temperature. We were 15 yards away. 10. The fog line shimmered, not in a natural way. Not like heat haze or light refracting. More like something behind it pressed toward us, stretching the surface of air itself. 5 yards. The father grabbed the rail. Called her. "Stop, please." I hesitated. The engine sputtered again, coughing like a dying breath. 3 yards. The father leaned toward me, voice firm in a way it hadn't been all day. "Turn the engine off. Now." I didn't want to, but the panic in his voice felt grounded, not frantic. Like something in him sensed a danger even deeper than mine. I cut the engine. The sudden silence felt like stepping into a sealed tomb. No birds, no insects, nothing but the slow, creeping sound of water pushing gently against the hull. We floated toward the fog line anyway, momentum carrying us. 2 yards. A shape moved behind the fog. I froze. It was faint, like a shadow behind frosted glass. Tall, narrow, upright, not shaped like an alligator, not shaped like a human, but something between. Limbs too long, torso too thin, head cocked at an angle the neck shouldn't allow. The daughter grabbed her father's jacket in both fists. "Dad, do you see it?" He shushed her sharply, but not unkindly, eyes glued on the moving silhouette. The fog line bulged outward, as though something pressed its face against it. Then it withdrew. Then it pressed again. No breath, no sound, just pressure. The father whispered, "It's testing it." The realization hit me a second later. It wasn't a barrier. It wasn't a warning. It was a membrane, like a skin stretched across the water, thin enough to see through but strong enough to hold something behind it. "Calder," the father said very quietly. "If the boat touches that, what happens?" "I don't know," I whispered. 1 yard. The fog line wavered now, like ripples moving across a sheet. A sudden splash sounded behind us. Deep, powerful, unmistakable. The thing from earlier. The daughter shrieked and clamped her eyes shut. The father spun halfway before I could stop him. "No," I hissed, grabbing his jacket. "Don't look." He froze mid-turn. The water behind us surged in a long, steady rise. Not like something swimming, like something lifting itself upward slowly, deliberately, to get a better angle. "Calder," he breathed. "It's coming." "I know." The fog line ahead wavered again. We were trapped between two impossibilities. Forward into the fog, backward into the thing. The boat drifted inches from the fog line. The silhouette behind it leaned closer, its shape distorting like a reflection on warped glass. A hand-shaped limb pressed against the membrane, long fingers splayed wide. The surface bent inward. Then the bend deepened. Then cracks of white light spread across it, like fractures. The fog wasn't a membrane. It was thinning, breaking. The thing behind it wanted out. The father looked at me with hollow eyes. "Calder, we have to move. We have to do something." I didn't think. I didn't plan. I slammed the throttle forward. The engine roared. The bow lifted, and we hit the fog line head-on. The world blinked. A sound like all the air in the Everglades being sucked into a vacuum exploded around us. The daughter screamed. The father shouted my name. My vision went white, then black. Then something in the fog reached for us. The world snapped back around me with the violence of a rubber band recoiling. My lungs seized before air rushed in all at once. The engine screamed under my hands. The boat shot forward, through the fog line, through the membrane, through whatever impossible wall had been holding that thing back. For a second, I thought we hadn't made it. A cold, Crushing weight clamped around my shoulders, like invisible hands trying to drag me backward. My vision flickered. The father yelled something, words I couldn't make out through the roar. The daughter sobbed into her jacket. Then, just as suddenly, the pressure vanished. The boat lurched into open air. Daylight, real daylight, slapped my face. Not bright daylight, but light. The sky ahead was still pale orange, nowhere near as dark as it had been one breath earlier. I blinked hard, disoriented. We had broken through to a different time of the same day. The father looked around wildly. What just happened? Did we, Calder, where are we? The daughter stared behind us. Dad, the fog. It's gone. I turned. The fog line wasn't behind us. There was nothing behind us. Nothing. Not fog. Not shadow. Not the silhouette. Not the thing that climbed our hull. Just a long, empty stretch of Everglades water, shimmering faintly in the late afternoon sun, as if nothing unusual had ever existed there. But I knew what I'd felt, what I'd seen, what had pressed its limb against the membrane. It wasn't my imagination. It wasn't swamp gas. It wasn't some trick of light. Something had been there, and now it wasn't. Calder, the father said again, louder this time. I swallowed. I don't know what happened, but we're going back to the dock. I pushed the throttle harder. The boat sliced the water in sharp, precise lines. The mangroves ahead looked familiar, too familiar actually. Landmarks that should have been 20 minutes away were now only 5. We had lost time, or gained time, or skipped it entirely. The father and daughter huddled together in silence. The adrenaline that had carried us through the fog line had burned off, leaving a heavy, trembling quiet. They weren't the only ones shaking. I gripped the steering lever hard enough that my knuckles turned white. The Everglades around us looked normal again, but there was a wrongness in the air, subtle but unmistakable. A faint heaviness, like humidity made of static instead of water. The boat passed a familiar outcropping of mangrove roots, the ones shaped like a fan. 5 minutes later, we should have passed a sharp bend to the right. We didn't. The channel was straight. Too straight. The father noticed first. Calder, this isn't the same route. I know, but we went this way earlier. No, I said, we didn't. His voice tightened. Then where are we? I wished I knew. A bird screeched above us, one long, piercing cry. It echoed through the trees in a way that shouldn't have been possible in this region. Echoes don't carry like that here. The trees swallow sound. The water diffuses it. This carried, longer than it should, louder than it should, like something amplifying it. The daughter clapped her hands over her ears. Make it stop. It's just a bird, the father soothed, though his voice trembled. The cry ended abruptly. Then another sound drifted through the channel. Splashing. Behind us. My heart stuttered. No, it couldn't have followed. We'd gotten through the fog line. If that's what it was. We'd left it behind. But the splash came again. Closer. And the Everglades have many sounds, but this one was distinctive. A weight shifting the water slowly, deliberately, like something pulling itself upward. Rule 2 echoed in my head. Do not look back. Calder, the father whispered. Tell me that isn't the same thing. I didn't answer, because speaking would have meant acknowledging the truth we were all trying not to accept. Instead, I tightened my grip on the throttle and accelerated. The boat vibrated with the strain, the engine whining as if panicking too. But the water behind us churned again, and the weight of it was wrong. Too deep, too heavy. A third splash. Closer still. The daughter started sobbing again. It's following us, she cried. It's following us. No, I said. It's just water displacement. The father snapped. Calder, don't do that. Not now. Don't lie to us. I closed my eyes for a half second. You're right. I said quietly. Something's behind us. The father inhaled sharply. The daughter whimpered. Don't look, I added. Whatever you do, don't look. The next splash wasn't a splash at all. It was a noise like something dragging along the surface of the water, like fingertips gliding across a sheet of glass. Then, a tap on the stern. Light, polite, deliberate. The father flinched so hard the entire boat wobbled. What does it want? He choked. I don't know. But something deep inside me whispered that it wasn't trying to board this time. It was hurting us, guiding us, pushing us toward somewhere. The channel widened ahead, opening into a broad lagoon that wasn't on any map. Not to my knowledge, not in any guide's memory, and certainly not along the route back to the unlisted dock. The water in the lagoon was unnaturally still. No ripples, no wind. The surface looked like oil, reflective, black, perfect. The father's voice shook. Calder, don't go in there. I tried to steer left. The boat resisted. Not mechanically, physically, as if the water itself didn't want us to leave. The daughter let out a strangled breath. Dad, it's under us. Because the stern lifted gently, like something buoyant was rising beneath it. Calder, the father whispered. Please, what do we do? I opened my mouth. Before I could speak, the water at the center of the lagoon bulged upward, not breaking, not splashing, rising, like something enormous was pushing the entire surface up from below. We drifted toward it, powerless, and the sound that followed was not a roar, but a long, slow exhale. An exhale that was not human, not animal, not from this world. The exhale rolled across the lagoon so slowly that it barely disturbed the surface. It wasn't wind. It wasn't breath. It was pressure, a shift in density you could feel in your bones, like the atmosphere thickened around your lungs. The father clutched the rail with both hands, knuckles bone white. The daughter buried her face against his arm, trembling so hard her shoulders shook the bench. I forced myself to stay alert. Terror is loud, but it's also blinding. If I let panic take over, we were dead. The airboat drifted deeper into the lagoon, carried by a current I couldn't see and couldn't steer away from. The bulge in the water swelled higher, a perfect dome of black liquid rising without breaking. It was smooth, not a ripple on its surface. Like something beneath it was forcing the water up with impossible precision. Calder, the father whispered. That's not water, doesn't do that. I know. That was all I could say. The dome grew until it towered 4 feet above the surface. Then 5. It stretched wider and wider, pushing outward in a slow, graceful expansion, like a lung filling with air, or a creature lifting its head. The daughter finally looked up. Her small voice cracked. Is it alive? The question hung in the air like a razor. The bulge pulsed once. Yes, it was alive. But alive wasn't the right word. This was something else. Something that didn't follow the mechanics of any creature in the Everglades. Something that didn't follow the mechanics of physics. The airboat slowed as we reached the edge of the bulge. The stern dipped again gently, as if our unseen pursuer was positioning us, guiding us. I checked the console. The engine was running, but the throttle felt disconnected, as if I were pushing against a force that simply refused to respond. We stopped drifting. We were held in place. A low vibration trembled through the hull, barely perceptible, but steady. The surface of the water around the dome began to ripple outward in perfect concentric rings, like a pebble had been dropped in the center over and over in slow motion. The father whispered, It's communicating. The daughter grabbed his arm. Dad, stop. Don't talk to it. Don't. But I understood what he meant. The rings weren't random. They were timed, deliberate, slow, consistent. And every time the rings pulsed outward, The air pressure in the boat changed, like the creature exhaled again. I swallowed hard. It's doing something. I don't know what. The father turned toward me, eyes wide and hollow. This place, this lagoon, are we still in the Everglades? I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Behind us, something brushed the underside of the stern again, lighter this time, like the way a hand steadies a child crossing a street. The daughter whimpered, "It's making sure we don't leave." A soft tap echoed under the hull. She wasn't wrong. The dome of water pulsed again. Then it sank, not all at once, slowly, like a massive creature lowering its body back into the depths. The water flowed downward in a smooth collapse, revealing nothing beneath it but sheer blackness that looked deeper than the lagoon should allow. Once the dome flattened into a still surface, the water directly in front of our boat began to swirl. Just a small circle at first, then wider, then widening still. The current grabbed the bow and pulled. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." The father gripped the rail. "Calder, stop it." I'm trying, but I wasn't in control. The water pulled harder, spinning us toward the center of the lagoon with a force that tightened around the hull like invisible rope. The engine whined as if straining. The bow dipped. The stern rose. We were being drawn toward the center. The swirl deepened, shadows spiraling downward into a vortex that wasn't natural, not angled, not chaotic, not shaped by wind or depth. It was round, perfectly round, a geometric impossibility in open water. The father shouted, "Calder, what is that?" "A drain," I said, but that word didn't fit either, because a drain leads somewhere. This felt like it led nowhere, or anywhere, or someplace we shouldn't go. The bow tilted farther downward. Water splashed over the front deck. The father shielded the daughter with his body. The boat creaked, metal groaning under strain. "No!" the father yelled. "No, stop, don't." The swirl accelerated. The vortex yawned open wider. Then something rose from it. Not a full shape, just the suggestion of one. A long, thin limb like the one behind the fog line, but this one broader, more fluid, as if made from the water itself. It unfurled upward in one smooth motion, stretching toward the sky like a branch growing in fast motion. The daughter screamed. The limb split into finger-like shapes at the end, reaching toward us, not grabbing, not attacking, reaching, offering. "No," I hissed. "Stay back." The limb froze mid-reach, then curled back slowly, as if trying to understand. The swirl slowed. The vortex narrowed. The limb sank. Then, like a switch flipping, every sound in the world returned at once. Birds, insects, the wind against the mangroves, the engines fully reconnected to the throttle. The vortex snapped shut beneath us. The bow lifted. The boat steadied. And the unseen force behind us, whatever guided us here, drifted away, leaving the hull abruptly weightless. The father gasped for breath. The daughter broke down sobbing. I stared at the water. Nothing moved. The lagoon rippled like ordinary water again. "Calder," the father whispered, voice hollow. Did it let us go?" I didn't respond, because the truth was settling in my stomach like lead. It didn't let us go. It had shown us something. The daughter suddenly pointed, voice breaking into a whisper. "Dad, called to the fog." I turned slowly. A thin, straight line of fog was forming at the mouth of the lagoon. But this time, it wasn't blocking us. It was forming behind us, closing. The fog line sealed itself across the mouth of the lagoon with a soft, almost soundless ripple, like a zipper closing the world behind us. I had seen fog earlier today. I had seen it move, shift, and react in ways no weather should. But this was different. This was intentional. A boundary being drawn. A message written in air. The father stared for several long seconds, his chest rising and falling in shallow, panicked breaths. Calder, we're trapped. No, I said quietly. We're being kept in. The daughter's voice cracked. Why? For what? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know, but because I did. The lagoon was quiet now. Unnaturally so. Not dead silent like before, but reverent, expectant. The kind of quiet that feels like a room after someone says listen. The water beneath us reflected the sky in an unbroken sheet, black with streaks of amber from the fading sun. The vortex was gone. The limb, whatever it had been, was gone. But the heavy, waiting presence in the air hadn't left. It was still here, watching, testing. Calder, the father whispered. Can the engine get us through that fog? I tightened my grip on the wheel. I'm not letting us sit here long enough to find out. I eased the throttle forward, not flooring it. The lagoon felt like the kind of place where sudden movements would be punished, but enough to push the airboat gently toward the fog line. The water let us move. No invisible drag, no unseen weight tugging at the hull. But the fog line ahead didn't waver, didn't dissipate, didn't behave like normal fog. It held rigid, a perfect white seam across the channel. The daughter wrapped both arms around her torso. It doesn't want us to leave. We're leaving anyway, I said. The father swallowed hard. Calder, before we hit it, if that thing is still out there. It is, I said before he could finish. Both of them went still. I didn't say it to scare them. I said it because pretending otherwise gave the thing more power. Whatever hunted us earlier, whatever pressed against the stern, followed us through the altered channel, led us into this impossible lagoon, hadn't been dismissed. The fog line didn't trap that thing out. It trapped us in. Hold on to something, I said. The father braced. The daughter clung to his jacket. I pushed the throttle. The boat surged toward the fog line. The temperature dropped again, cold enough that my hands stung against the metal controls. A faint ringing sound trembled across the water, high-pitched, almost electrical. The fog line brightened, as if something behind it exhaled light. 5 yards. 4. 3. The father whispered. Please work. Please, God, please work. 2. 1. We hit the fog line. No impact. No resistance. No shattering membrane like last time. Instead, the fog swallowed the bow silently, like a mouth closing over a spoon. A wave of cold rolled over us, raising goosebumps across my arms. My throat tightened as if the air itself thickened. The engine sputtered but didn't stall. Then came the worst part. I couldn't see. Not the water. Not the bow. Not my own hand. The fog wasn't mist. It was blindness. Total and absolute. The daughter whimpered. Dad, Dad, I can't see. I'm right here, he murmured, pulling her into his side. Something scraped the hull. Not hard. Not directional. Just a slow, exploratory glide, like fingertips brushing along the metal. The father stiffened. Calder, what is that? What is that? I clenched the wheel. Don't move. Don't lean. Don't turn. The scraping shifted to the other side of the hull, then underneath, then back behind us, moving in a slow, circling pattern. The engine whined as if suffocating. The boat slowed even though the throttle was still forward. The fog thickened further, if that was even possible, pressing in like cotton soaked in ice water. I don't like this, the daughter whispered, voice cracking. I don't like it, I don't like it. I know, I said, softer than before. We're getting through. I didn't know that. The scraping stopped. The silence pressed in. Then, a wet sound. A breath. Low. Close. Behind me. The father tensed. Calder, is it on the boat? No, I said quickly. No. It's The breath came again, this time next to my ear. My entire body froze. Something was in the fog with us. Not outside, not underneath. Inside, moving on the boat. I didn't turn. Turning felt like death. The daughter let out a broken sob. Dad, Dad, it's here, it's here. The father pulled her closer. Don't look. Don't look. Keep your eyes down. The breath drifted across my neck, warm and cold at the same time, like exhale mixed with evaporating ice. My heartbeat punched against my ribs with dizzying force. I fixed my gaze on the vague outline of the console, barely visible through the haze. Then something touched my shoulder. Not grabbing, not clawing, resting, as if placing a hand there. A limb. Long too long. My mouth went dry. The engine sputtered again, coughing, choking, gasping like the fog was filling its pistons. Calder, the father whispered. It's touching you. I know. The hand tightened. Not painfully. Just enough to communicate something. No aggression. No malice. Just intention. And then, the fog around us thinned. Not dissolved. Pulled back. The hand lifted from my shoulder. The outline of the bow reappeared. The father gasped. The daughter's sobbing slowed. We were gliding through open air again, emerging from a fog line like a boat breaking through a curtain. The Everglades returned around us. The channel was real. The mangroves were real. The light was dimmer now, minutes from full dark, but real. I exhaled shakily. The father looked at me. Did it let us go again? I stared ahead, because in the water, just 50 yards ahead, a second fog line was forming. And this one wasn't horizontal. It was vertical. A pillar of fog rising from the water like a doorway, waiting for us to enter. The vertical fog column stood ahead of us like a white monolith, rising straight from the water to a height I couldn't judge, 10 feet, 20, more. It held its shape with unnatural stillness, a perfect slab of pale light, suspended in the dimming dusk. The airboat slowed on its own again, the engine humming uneasily beneath my hands. The daughter clutched her father's arm. It's standing. Fog can't stand. No, the father breathed. No, it can't. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. Every rule I had learned, whispered by guides long before me, had warned me of fog, but none of them, had mentioned fog that built itself into structures, shapes, geometry, invitations. The father looked at me. Calder, please, tell me we're not going through that. I wanted to. I wanted to lie, to calm them, to say we had another path, another option. But the channel behind us was narrowing again, closing like a muscle constricting. The mangrove seemed to lean inward, roots shifting in ways they shouldn't, branches dipping lower than physics allowed. We weren't going back. Something out there was shepherding us forward, guiding us, testing us. We're moving, I said quietly, but we're not going toward it. I tried to turn the wheel. The boat turned, for 1 second, then the stern dragged sideways, hard enough to scrape something submerged, and the bow snapped back toward the fog doorway like a compass needle, finding true north. The daughter let out a high, strangled cry. It wants us to go in. The father reached over and held her hand tightly. We're right here. I'm right here. The fog doorway brightened slightly as we drifted closer. It wasn't a glow. It wasn't light from the sky. It was illumination from within. I felt a horrible sensation spread through my chest, dread mixed with understanding. The fog didn't block vision. It didn't obscure. It shaped itself to conceal or reveal exactly what it wanted. And it wanted us to see this doorway. The father swallowed hard. What's inside? Don't assume it leads anywhere, I said. Fog is just condensation. Even I didn't believe that. The father didn't either. Condensation, he said shakily. Doesn't wait. We drifted closer. 30 yards. 20. 10. The structure came into full form. Not a wall of fog, not an obstruction. A gap. An opening. A threshold wide enough for a boat to pass through. Inside the doorway was nothing but darkness. Not blackness. Darkness. A heavy, velvet absence of light that made the mind feel squeezed when you looked at it for too long. The engine shuddered as the bow aligned with the doorway. Calder, the father said. If we don't go in, what happens? We find out what's behind us, I said. The words hit him harder than I expected. He looked back, not turning his head, just flicking his eyes. I saw it too. A low ripple moved across the surface of the water behind us. Silent, deliberate, hunting. The daughter saw it and buried her face in her hands. Dad, please, make it stop. Please. He wrapped his arms around her and whispered into her hair. It's going to be okay. But even he didn't put conviction behind it. We reached the threshold. The temperature dropped instantly. The air turned dense, cold enough to hurt. I felt it grip my lungs. The fog doorway hummed. The same pitch I'd heard when passing through the horizontal fog line, but this time deeper, almost resonant, vibrating the wooden benches beneath us. The father braced himself. Okay. We go through. The daughter sobbed once and nodded. I didn't move the throttle. I didn't need to. The boat drifted on its own. The bow crossed into the darkness, and sound vanished instantly. Not like before. This was worse. Even the engine went silent, though it still vibrated under my palms. The father shouted something, but no sound came out. Even his voice was swallowed whole. His mouth moved, but no air carried it. The daughter grabbed him, panicking as her scream failed to exist. I looked down. My own breath didn't make a sound. We had entered a place where noise could not survive. Only motion, only sensation. The walls of the doorway pressed on us, not physically, but mentally. A pressure that made my vision pulse. Shapes flickered in the darkness ahead. Not forms, not animals. Suggestions, glimpses of movement that vanished when focused on. Something brushed my ankle. I flinched but didn't jump. Something brushed the back of my neck, light, familiar. The same touch in the fog earlier. No sound followed. Only pressure. Only presence. Forward. We drifted deeper. The darkness shifted subtly, as if the space around us was narrowing, guiding us through a corridor that wasn't real. The father's eyes were wide, darting everywhere. The daughter was crying silently, her face soaked with tears that made no noise as they fell. The touch on my neck pressed again, the same intentional placement as before. Then it pulled, gently, forward, guiding. I wanted to fight it, but the alternative was whatever followed us into the lagoon, whatever scraped our hull, whatever had been hunting us since the channel first grew silent. We drifted. The darkness condensed, closing around the boat like the inside of a cave. Then, a pinprick of light appeared ahead. Small, distant, growing slowly, like a camera aperture widening. The father pointed, his breath ragged though silent. The light became a shape, then a circle, then a full sphere of pale brightness hanging in the dark. Not warm, not hot, just bright. We drifted toward it, pulled by unseen current or intention. The light trembled once, then split, like something on the other side had just opened its eyes. Then, sound returned, all at once. The father gasped loudly. The daughter screamed. The engine roared, and we burst out of the doorway, into open water again, but not the water we'd entered from. The sun was lower, the mangroves were taller, and the channel ahead was unfamiliar. The father whispered, "Calder, where are we?" I didn't answer, because the fog doorway behind us was already closing, like a mouth sealing shut, and whatever was on the other side did not want to let us go yet. The fog doorway sealed itself like two curtains pulled together by invisible hands. The instant it vanished, the air felt strangely thin, as if the world had exhaled in relief, or braced for what came next. I kept my hands on the controls, knuckles white, breathing hard through the ache in my chest. The water around us was darker than it should have been. Not black, not unfamiliar, just older. The mangroves lining the channel rose higher overhead than any I'd seen in the main tourist routes. Their roots tangled in dense knots, forming walls that leaned inward until the sky above was nothing more than a narrow strip of fading light. The daughter finally spoke, voice shaking. We're not in the same place." "No," I said, "we're not." The father swallowed. "Then where are we?" I didn't know. I didn't even have a direction. The Everglades is a labyrinth on a good day, a living, shifting maze. But this wasn't navigation error. This was relocation. The engine continued humming, steady now, as if whatever had taken hold of it had finally let go. I eased the throttle forward. We drifted past a mangrove root arch that resembled a rib cage. The air felt heavier the farther we traveled, like moving deeper into a closed-off room. The daughter shivered. "Calder, I don't think we're supposed to be here." She was right. Every instinct in me screamed to turn around, to get away from the narrowing channel, the unnatural quiet, the sense of eyes where there were no eyes. But behind us, the water moved. A ripple spread across the surface, one long curve, smooth and deliberate. The father stiffened. It followed us. "No," I said softly. "It brought us." The ripple grew larger, tightening into a shape. Something submerged glided just beneath the surface, keeping pace with us, mirroring the boat's movement with perfect synchronicity. The father grabbed the rail. "Calder, go faster." I pushed the throttle. The water creature matched us. The daughter whimpered. "Dad, it's right there. It's right there." The narrow channel opened suddenly into a wide pool, one I'd never seen marked on any map, even the ranger surveys. The water was unnaturally still, glassy with the faint mirror sheen. The mangroves circled inward like the walls of an arena. The ripple stopped. Something rose. Not the creature. Not a limb. A shape. A mound in the center of the pool, lifting the water with the same impossible surface tension I'd seen in the lagoon, smooth domed, rising upward until it formed an island of perfectly still liquid. A water hill. A swell. A presence. The daughter choked on a sob. "Calder, please, what is that?" "Something that wants something from us," I said. "I don't know what." The father gripped his daughter's shoulders. "We need to leave." "We can't," I said, because the water around us was shifting again, reorganizing itself, small ripples turning inward, pulling the boat gently toward the center. Not violently, not threateningly, guiding us. The father's voice cracked. "It's hurting us again." "Yes," I said. He looked at me with a desperation I couldn't ease. Why? I didn't know, which terrified me more than anything. The mound of water rose higher. Then it flattened at the top, forming a perfect circle, like a platform. And something appeared on it. Not a creature, not a limb, an object, a small black box, no larger than a first aid kit. The daughter gasped. "Dad, what is that?" The father leaned forward. "Calder, do you see it?" "I see it." The water pulled us closer. The box sat perfectly centered, untouched by ripple or motion. The surface of the mound held it like a tray. The father whispered, "It wants us to take it." "No," I said sharply. "Do not touch that." "It put it there," he said. "It brought us here. It called her. It saved us from something worse. That doesn't mean it's safe. The daughter shook her head violently. Dad, please. Don't. Please. The father looked between us, his daughter on the brink of breaking apart, and me, a man he had known for less than a day but trusted in a way he didn't have time to question. He hesitated. The water behind us rippled. Something heavy shifted below. Waiting, the father squeezed his daughter's hand. Stay in the boat. Then he stepped forward. No, I shouted. He reached out toward the box. The moment his hand touched it, the water mound collapsed. Not violently. Instantly. Like a trapdoor dropping. The box hit the water. The father lurched forward, but caught himself on the rail. The water beneath, where the mound had been churned, slowly, deeply, like something moved upward from the bottom. A limb rose. Not fork-shaped. Not thin. Not humanoid. Water formed into a shape that wasn't one, shifting every second, something between liquid and muscle and intention. It reached toward the box, and then it held it up toward us, offering. The father reached out again instinctively. Stop, I yelled, but it was too late. The creature lifted the box higher, as if insisting he take it. The father swallowed hard, met my eyes with hollow resolve, and said, If this is why it brought us, we have to. He reached out. The water limb extended. Their hands met. The box touched the father's palm. A pulse rippled through the air, silent, but felt in the bones. The limb sank. The pool stilled. The father held the box against his chest, trembling, confused, but unharmed. The daughter sobbed in relief. I didn't feel relief. I felt dread, because the creature hadn't chased us. It hadn't hunted us. It had delivered something to us. It wanted us to bring it back. The airboat drifted toward the far end of the pool, where the mangroves parted in a narrow line, an exit appearing exactly when we needed it. The father whispered, Calder, take us home. I pushed the throttle. The engine obeyed. We left the pool behind. The water settling flat as glass. No more fog. No more shapes. No more impossible geometry. But the weight of the black box in the father's hands felt like a new rule being written inside my skull. What follows you out of the Everglades doesn't always stay there. When we reached the main channel, the real, familiar one, the sun was finally setting. The father clutched the box. The daughter leaned into him. Both alive, both safe, for now. But the water behind us rippled once. A long, slow, deliberate exhale followed. Far away, but not far enough. And I knew, deep in my bones, that whatever gave us that box wasn't done with us. Not tonight. Not ever.